The following is a presentation of the Pro Wrestling Report. Informative, entertaining, and real since 1998.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the post show from the Pro Wrestling Report, talking about the 2012 WWE Royal Rumble. Damian Nelson coming to you here from the Horny Goat Hideaway in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where we did the GLCW show right before the Royal Rumble matchup and the Royal Rumble event, rather. So it's been a long night of wrestling action here in Milwaukee, all culminating with the 2012 WWE Royal Rumble. We are taking your calls, ladies and gentlemen. The number by which you can call us is 877-317-9772. Again, that's 877-317-9772. And we are also following your conversation in the chat room right here at Blog Talk Radio. And we want to welcome the hundreds of you that are in there right now talking about the Royal Rumble and the thousands of you who follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter account name is @PWR Show. And also, one more time, on Facebook. Got a couple of questions we're looking for the answers for right now on Facebook, including pass or fail of the Royal Rumble. We'll get to those results later on in the program. We're going to be joined by David Hero. We're going to be joined by Meathead. Going to be joined by Matthew Thomas. And going to be joined by Dwayne Williams, all here on the post show from the Pro Wrestling Report as we talk about the Royal Rumble. So let's get right down to it, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, the winner of the 2012 WWE Royal Rumble is Sheamus. Yes, the Great White Sheamus has won the Royal Rumble matchup and is going to WrestleMania after eliminating Chris Jericho, the final two men standing in the ring for the Royal Rumble, to come out on top in that matchup. But some other very noteworthy things happening in that Rumble matchup, and we'll get to those later, including several surprise entrants and a rare female entrance into the Royal Rumble. Other matchups on this card included the opening contest, which was a steel cage match for the World Heavyweight Championship. It was Daniel Bryan versus The Big Show versus Mark Henry. Big Show and Mark Henry, the challengers, versus Daniel Bryan, the champion. And it was Daniel Bryan who would escape the cage first and hold on to his World Heavyweight Championship in what could be viewed as a surprise by many, many people, not expecting Daniel Bryan to win that matchup and to leave the Royal Rumble tonight still the World Heavyweight Champion. The next matchup was a bonus match. It was a 8-diva tag team matchup as the Bellas teamed with Natalya and Beth Phoenix to take on Alicia Fox, Eve, and Tamina. And I'm missing the other participant in that matchup. I can't read my scribble. But it would be the team of Beth Phoenix winning that matchup. Beth Phoenix returning to her dominant ways here in the Royal Rumble tonight. The next matchup was John Cena versus Kane. That match ending in a double countout, seemingly setting forward another match at next month's Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. The real story came, though, with what happened after that matchup. Earlier in the night, we saw John Laurinaitis invite Zack Ryder into his own dressing room where he could watch the pay-per-view and be comfortable in his wheelchair as he's suffering from his back injury from this past Monday on Raw. Well, Kane would go back as the fight between him and Cena after the matchup ended up backstage. Kane would go back and find Zack Ryder and pull him out of that dressing room and then attack him in the ring, which also led to an attack on John Cena by Kane and a choke slam onto Zack Ryder. Well done by Kane and John Cena in that matchup. And the match saw, again, a double countout, so no real finish in that matchup. But another bonus match would occur right after it, as Drew McIntyre took on the Funkasaurus, Brodus Clay. Apparently, if Drew would have won this matchup, he would have gained a spot into the Royal Rumble. However, that would not be the case tonight, as Brodus Clay defeated Drew McIntyre in that matchup. CM Punk versus Dolph Ziggler for the WWE Championship. John Laurinaitis was a special guest referee. And it would be CM Punk retaining the championship in that matchup. It would be CM Punk retaining the championship in that matchup with some, I guess, shenanigans you can call them, by Johnny Ace, who had made himself the enforcer outside the ring as opposed to the... excuse the echo there for a minute. We'll fix that. As opposed to the The referee inside the ring, however, would be John Laurinaitis finally making the count, the 1-2 count, not quite 3, the 2 count on Dolph Ziggler. CM Punk retains, and that leads, of course, into the story tomorrow night on WWE Raw, where John Laurinaitis is allegedly going to be reviewed by the board. We are going to be joined here in just a minute by the rest of the Pro Wrestling Report broadcast team and some special guests. But before we do that and talk more about some of the takeaways from tonight's Royal Rumble event, we're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, it'll be your phone calls, it'll be the rest of the PWR team, and we'll be talking more about the 2012 WWE Royal Rumble.
Subscribe to the Pro Wrestling Report on YouTube. We promise we'll never rickroll you, but we might just chokeslam you. Click the subscribe button now and be part of the revolution. Stop stalking your ex and be our friend on Facebook and join the tremendous worldwide discussion. Facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report.
Welcome back to the post show from the Pro Wrestling Report. Damian Nelson here at the Horny Goat Hideaway in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We're talking about the 2012 WWE Royal Rumble. We're going to be joined by the rest of the Pro Wrestling Report broadcast team in just a minute, but it's always interesting to hear the perspective of wrestling superstars of these big events from WWE and TNA Wrestling. And joining us right now here on the post show to share with you his thoughts on tonight's Royal Rumble matchup, it is the man who is known for the gore, Ryno. Ryno, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, and what an introduction. And, yeah, I thought the Royal Rumble, it was a great card all together from top to bottom, and I was very impressed with Jericho and Sheamus at the end.
Are you surprised with the winner ultimately being Sheamus in that matchup, where many people thought it was going to be Randy Orton with it being in St. Louis, or even Chris Jericho?
You know what, actually, with Randy Orton, I thought when it came down to the Final Four, I thought Randy Orton was going to win, but you know, obviously Sheamus is a big dude. He's, very talented, and he's getting over. You know, he's been over for a while, I should say. But, and then when it came down to the last two, I thought Jericho was going to win, but it probably made sense, for Sheamus to win. But, I mean, in all, I think it was a great pay-per-view from top to bottom. So I really did like Mick Foley and, what's the Italian kid name? Santino, thank you.
The Sock versus the Cobra?
Yeah, I drew a blank there, but he's one of my favorite characters, very entertaining, and a Paisan, So.
And Ryno, you've been in those Royal Rumble matchups. You know how interesting it is and how unique it can be over the course of that hour's time that you're spending time in that matchup. So what perspective do the participants think while they're in that ring for the Royal Rumble matchup? What's your mindset as you try to win that spot at WrestleMania?
Well, all the competitors are very serious, just like I'm being serious with this interview, because I'm a competitor in the ring. And, when you're doing a broadcast, it's just one of those things you have to be serious. And it's all business in the ring. It's all business here, going to your this broadcast and going out to your listeners. So you have to be very serious. And especially in the wrestling ring, So you're going out there for one thing in mind, and to win and to perform and be as professional as possible, too, along the way.
Ryno, you obviously your professionalism is amazing. Tonight in a big matchup, a three-way match here at the Horny Goat Hideaway, watching it on the largest television in the Midwest, the Royal Rumble. Sheamus wins, but CM Punk retains the WWE Championship against Dolph Ziggler in a matchup which really saw Dolph Ziggler get beat 4 times.
You know what? You can, in this business, you can be beat, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. You could be beaten for a year, and you can come back and be on the top of your game and, win the world title, So if he's been in a little slump, it doesn't matter. He's I love watching him wrestle. I think CM Punk is probably one of the best out there, if not the best. And, it's just he's just got it, CM Punk. And, he did retain the title, but you know what? I don't think you've seen the last of Ziggler, and I think the best is yet to come with that kid.
Well, Ryno, thank you so much for joining us here on the post show, talking about the 2012 WWE Royal Rumble. You never know who you're going to get on the post show from the Pro Wrestling Report, and that perspective, definitely an interesting one. And as I said, we're going to be taking your phone calls, ladies and gentlemen. The number 877-317-9772. We're also going to be joined by the rest of the PWR broadcast team in just a few minutes. But a tremendous Royal Rumble matchup, one that saw so many interesting things happen, including several surprise entrants that I don't think we expected in the Royal Rumble matchup, including names such as the Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Booker T, Jerry Lawler, Michael Cole, Ricardo Rodriguez, when Alberto Del Rio's music hit, and everybody thought it was going to be him, but it wasn't, and people who had participated in matchups earlier on, including The Big Show, Dolph Ziggler, and a very big surprise entrance, getting back into a WWE ring for the first time in a very long time, the Road Dogg Jesse James. All those names involved in tonight's Royal Rumble matchup, but it would go down to the Final Four. The Final Four of Randy Orton, Sheamus, The Big Show, and Chris Jericho. And Ryno, one final question. Hometown, the hometown effect. You hear a lot of wrestling fans talk about it. You've seen it happen with Cena in Boston. Tonight with Randy Orton in St. Louis. Does it matter to the company when you're performing in a matchup on such a high caliber scale that you're in your hometown for that night, or does it more matter going forward into the future?
I think it all depends on the situation and all that stuff, but sometimes you have to look towards the future, but then again, feel-good moments are very important in wrestling and, in sports altogether and in entertainment, So it's just a toss-up, I think. But, yeah, Road Dogg, I thought he was impressive. I wanted to mention that. And he's my boy. He's funny as all heck. And, I thought he was very impressive, looked great. And, man, he still got it, It sounded like I couldn't really hear, but it sounded like the fans were chanting, "You still got it." So I bet you he was. He's still probably rolling on a high out there, after the card, going and having a good showing. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, I think it's one of those feel-good moments, or you move towards the future. I think it's a toss-up,
All right, Ryno, thank you so much for joining us here on the post show. We've got more guests that are going to be joining us, including Scotty Hotty, and Scotty, if you'd like to, where'd Scotty Hotty go? He's supposed to be here in the studio. There he is. If you want to come on over and join us, I'd love to hear your perspective. Another man who's participated in many a Royal Rumble matchup, but your perspective on really two men who I think shined as stars tonight in the Rumble. Firstly, The Miz, who entered at number 1 and lasted till just about or almost the end of the matchup, and then the man who eliminated Mick Foley, the man who eliminated Booker T, the man who eliminated the Great Khali, the man who eliminated Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He was somewhat of a legend killer tonight. He is the Intercontinental Champion, Cody Rhodes. Your thoughts on the performance of both The Miz and Cody Rhodes in the Royal Rumble matchup tonight?
Phenomenal. It's been cool for me on a personal note to see guys like The Miz and CM Punk. Both guys that I wrestled when they first came into the company, either their first match into the company or their tryout match, the dark match in the company. So it's cool to for me as somebody I don't get to see a lot of WWE TV these days. I watched the pay-per-view tonight, first time in a long time, and it's cool to see how they've grown and how they've come along, and they're stars, and they've proven themselves, and it's cool, especially for somebody like The Miz, who I liked right from the beginning, to see him make it. So
now, having participated in the many Rumble matches that you've been in, and you've made those big returns in the past as well in the Rumble matchups, what's your mindset in that ring? 30 men participating, you've got that shot at WrestleMania. You're going out there, that it could be either a lucky moment or a ton of skill that could make you win that matchup. What type of psyche do you have to have going into that 30-man battle royal?
The Royal Rumble, it's one of, it's probably the second or third biggest pay-per-view for in the wrestling business every year. So whenever you're on that stage, that platform, you're trying to do something to make the fans remember you and to stand out. And lucky for me, I had that moment at Madison Square Garden in 2000, the Royal Rumble, and Rikishi and Bryan Christopher and myself, we all got to do the dance, and people still ask me about it today, and that was probably one of the definitely the top 3 highlights of my career. So I think everybody's looking for that, not only to go out there and win the Rumble, but to have that defining moment in their career.
It was July 4th, the last time you actually sat in for me on this program, and you played the role of host and did a tremendous job. That was one of our most listened to episodes.
Nobody can sit in for you.
And you got to imagine that could be part of the reason where just tonight the Pro Wrestling Report won the title of the best broadcast wrestling show in the world in the Wrestling Radio Awards. So I guess we'll just give you the trophy for that, Scotty.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't. It was fun for me to come on that night and fill it. Try to fill your shoes. Those are big.
You did okay.
Fill, but I did okay. But I listened to the show. I like the show, and congratulations to you guys. It's a very entertaining show.
Well, thank you, Scotty Hotty, for joining us, and thank you to Ryno for joining us as well. The discussion continues here on the Pro Show for the Royal Rumble. We're going to take yet another time out, and when we come back, we're going to welcome the rest of the Pro Wrestling Report broadcast team and talk more about tonight's Royal Rumble, including your phone calls and the results of our poll, which is currently up on Facebook. Pass or fail for the 2012 WWE Royal Rumble. Head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report, and vote right now. We'll be back in just a moment.
Don't forget to follow PWR right here on Blog Talk Radio right now. Be reminded of upcoming episodes and never miss Blog Talk Radio's most popular sports show. Follow PWR now. The Pro Wrestling Report. Informative, entertaining, and real since 1998. But you already knew that. There's only one place to get the latest from pro wrestling, including the only place to get 100% verified wrestling news. PWRshow.com. PWRshow.com, where you'll never find pop-ups or misleading headlines. Watch or listen to all of our latest TV and radio broadcasts on demand. And get caught up on wrestling news between episodes. PWRshow.com is the cleanest, friendliest, and most fan-friendly source for wrestling news on the web. Stop stalking your ex and be our friend on Facebook and join the tremendous worldwide discussion. Facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report post-show here on Blog Talk Radio. Damian Nelson coming to you here from the Horny Goat Hideaway. I want to thank our guests from just a moment ago, Scotty, Hotty, and Ryno, giving you their perspective as men who have participated in it on the 2012 WWE Royal Rumble. Sheamus, the winner of the Royal Rumble this year. It was not Chris Jericho. It was not Randy Orton, which I think comes as a surprise to a lot of people. We're discussing that and just about everything else that happened on the Rumble tonight. We're going to be joined in just a moment by the rest of the Pro Wrestling Report broadcast team, and then finally joined by David Hero, who is going to share with us his thoughts on the Rumble matchup. But first, I want to bring on the man they call Meathead, who is also here somewhere at the Horny Goat Hideaway as we talk about the Royal Rumble. But Sheamus wins, Punk retains, Bryan retains, Karma returns, Cody Rhodes shines, and The Miz makes it to the final six in the Rumble. Your thoughts on tonight's event?
I thought there was way too many gimmicky type wrestlers. I mean, do we need to see the entire commentary team? Once you saw Kane come in and Booker ripping off his gimmick, you knew Michael Cole was coming in there. And I thought that was kind of a waste. I also thought with the Royal Rumble, we didn't need two separate 7-minute promos on Rock and Cena. That doesn't belong on pay-per-view. You could have got another match in there. You could have made one of the girls' matches go longer. I did like, however, I liked seeing, an homage, if you will, to Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the first ever Royal Rumble winner. I did like seeing him. I like Jericho being out there. I was rooting for Jericho, to win the whole thing, and Jericho coming out at 29 I thought was a great spot for him. I thought they really took care of Miz by being number one and let him stay as long as possible because he wasn't going to win it at one, but Miz looked very strong. And, again, they really put over the younger talent, the Cody Rhodes, the Zigglers, the, Miz. They put those guys over. Kofi even had a nice solid run in the Rumble.
Did you say Cody or Kofi?
No, I said both, really. Cody had a good run and Kofi.
I think Cody's got the record for the most eliminations tonight, which is fantastic.
He did get the record. That's official?
Well, according to me.
Well, then it's not really accurate.
Thank you, Meathead. We'll get more commentary and analysis from you in just a few moments, but we're also joined by our SmackDown correspondent, Matthew. Matthew, how are you tonight, and what were your thoughts on what was a Royal Rumble that didn't see much surprise aside from the Royal Rumble matchup itself?
I'm doing great, Damian. I was glad to see a Sheamus win. You know, I love it when they use the Royal Rumble itself to elevate some of the younger talent, like we saw tonight, like we saw last year with Del Rio. I got to say, the rest of the card I was a little bit underwhelmed with, especially the opening steel cage match. I honestly wish it would have gotten a little more time. I felt like it was kind of rushed through, you know, especially when you take into account, like Meathead was saying, some of the lengthy video packages we got and some of the unannounced bonus matches that I thought were somewhat unnecessary.
And you mentioned those videos that we got, and the two videos that you're referencing is one for John Cena, the other for The Rock, with the focus being WrestleMania 28. You know, I got to say, whether they had their place on this pay-per-view or not tonight, they did what they should have done, which was really tell the fans about those two stars, not that they don't know, but really give more insight and also build what is the main event, the true main event, the headlining main event for WrestleMania in Miami. If you had to pick, Matthew, which of the two promos were better between The Rock's or John Cena's, who would you give it to?
I enjoyed the Cena promo. You know, I thought it was well done. I thought it ran a bit long, and I felt with it coming on the heels of that opening steel cage match, I felt like it took time away that match could have been given.
And tonight in the Rumble matchup, who would you say, in your opinion, Matthew, were the standouts of the 30 entrants into the Rumble? Who really impressed you, or who really did more than you thought they were going to do in that 30-man matchup?
Well, I got to say, you know, Cody and Miz, they both looked strong throughout the entire match. I got to say, as far as who I enjoyed, though, the Ricardo appearance, Ricardo Rodriguez has got to be. That's the thing. One of the things that's probably going to stick with me after the Royal Rumble tonight. I had a blast with that.
How great was it? Because we haven't talked much about that. You hear Alberto Del Rio's music, and you assume it's him, the man who won the Royal Rumble last year, but then some jalopy, it looked like an old Nissan Stanza, comes out, and it's clearly not Alberto, but it's Ricardo Rodriguez. And I'm not sure if there's enough detail behind the reasoning of Ricardo in this. I guess he was trying to be Alberto, trying to take that spot, but it seemed like he was almost mocking Alberto Del Rio tonight.
Yeah, well, the fans in St. Louis looked like they ate it up. They had a great time with it. And like you said, the presentation of it, you know, you hear the music hit, and then the car finally comes into view, and you realize, you know, something's up, and then slowly you realize what's going on. But now I had a great time with it, and he actually got an elimination under his belt, didn't he?
Yes, he did. But it was funny. It was good. And you know, what's really interesting about the Rumble is you get those moments of levity where you get things that you didn't necessarily expect. I mean, Meathead, one of those things I don't think we necessarily expected was, as we talked about earlier, it was the Sacco versus the Cobra.
Sacco versus Cobra. That was some entertaining stuff. Matter of fact, I marked a little bit. I popped just a little bit to watch Sacco and Cobra go at it because, you know, Mick Foley was just in there to obviously, you know, entertain the fans. And Santino wasn't a, you know, real threat to win the Royal Rumble either, even though last year he was the last person eliminated in the Rumble. But you know what? Foley and Santino working alongside of each other, and then somebody else eliminates them. So I thought it was a nice, fun spot.
A Royal Rumble that included a lot of things, including several times in the Rumble where it seemed as if the focus in WWE was very clear, and it seemed as if that focus was continuing on building or elevating newer stars. And while some of them may have been around the last several years, you can't take away from the lack of focus on the John Cena's, the Triple H's of the world in this particular matchup tonight. One other noteworthy exception to the Rumble that people thought we might see was The Undertaker. The Undertaker not yet back in WWE. One would expect that we would see him back soon. It was late February last year when he finally came back and got involved in that matchup with Triple H at WrestleMania. But not seen tonight was The Undertaker. Matthew, question for you. Was The Undertaker or any of those other big-name stars, and granted there were a lot in there, Big Show was in there, Randy Orton was in there, Chris Jericho, but did the lack of some of those mainstays make it a more or have any impact on the match, the Royal Rumble itself, for you?
for me personally, not having those big names in it gave it another level of unpredictability, and a feeling of this can go any way. So for me, it did not negatively impact it at all. Actually, I think it helped add to that surprise element, trying to figure out, what direction they were going in.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that insight. And we're going to take a few of your phone calls now and hear what you all thought out there about the Royal Rumble matchup and the Royal Rumble event itself tonight. Well, what we want you to do is, if you've already indicated that you want to speak, listen for your area code. We're going to go to you by area code, and then you tell us your name and the location you're calling from. We're going to first go to a caller calling us from the 913 area code. Caller from the 913, you're live.
Hello, PWR Universe.
Hello. Who is this?
Yeah, this is Nathan from Kansas City.
Hello, Nathan.
Hey. Overall feelings about the Rumble tonight, I just feel like it was an average, middle-of-the-road Rumble for me personally. I mean, the pacing in the Rumble was a little bit off, too gimmicky, I felt. And I just want to know what you guys really feel about what I feel was the biggest miss of the night, which is the John Cena-Kane matchup. I just feel like the payoff wasn't there. I mean, I understand they want to keep it going, but, you can't keep it going up to WrestleMania. So, like, what's the payoff, and, like, what's the payoff going to be?
Thank you very much for that call, and good questions. And one thing that was interesting about that matchup between Cena and Kane was when the double countout happened, it was sort of anticlimactic. There was no announcement. They kept fighting, but there was no real passion behind their fighting. And it just sort of dragged on. So it was a bit interesting in that regard. But I think the payoff for this is probably going to come at next month's Elimination Chamber, which happens to be right here from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Not saying those two are going to be in a chamber match per se, but, Kane left St. Louis very strong tonight. I mean, he took out Zack Ryder, who was obviously injured. He took out John Cena. And Kane came out of this looking very, very good, and I'm not sure for this being their first matchup that it doesn't make sense for there to not have been a finish. I was entertained by the match, but I got to say I think the match was a little off. It didn't seem to be hitting on all cylinders. It wasn't a bad match, but given the caliber of those two performers, I think I might have expected a little bit more. But again, you're exactly right, caller. It didn't really strike me as being as powerful at the end as it could have been. Let's go to another phone call. We've got a caller calling us from the 704 area code. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Damian, this is Phil from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hello, Phil.
Hey, I agree with you with that last point. I think it may be, with these new guys coming out, Kane and the Big Show, they kind of might have run their course. And so I think fans might be a little, even though they've been repackaged a few times, they might be a little bored with them. But didn't call to beat those guys up, just agreeing with your last point. I thought the Royal Rumble was pretty good. There was a couple of spots that I really liked. I love the Ricardo entrance. I think that might have been the best entrance I've ever seen.
Was it a Nissan Stanza?
I don't know, but I could kind of tell by the amount of horn blowing that was going that it wasn't Alberto. He doesn't blow the horn that much, I don't think.
Right.
But when he came down, I lost it. I was in the chat room, man, going crazy. But the second spot was when Dolph turned that go to sleep into a rocker dropper or famouser or whatever. I thought that was awesome. And the third spot of the night was Kofi hitting that handstand on the outside, going over to the stairs. I got to give the man props for that. Because last year we saw John Morrison hit the rail and then do a Jeff Hardy over to the stairs. So yeah. I think in general my comment is, and then I'll take it off the air, I think both shows, or both of the predominant shows, TNA and WWE, have done such a great job with writing, with execution, that we kind of expect these pay-per-views to kind of be like that Money in the Bank from last year. And they're not all going to be like that. I think this was a great show. I had a lot of good spots, and I would spend the money again for it.
Good to hear. Well, thank you so much for that phone call from Charlotte. We appreciate that feedback. And, I think a great point brought up there with Kofi Kingston. Kofi Kingston spent a good amount of time in the Rumble, And he did have that John Morrison moment, I guess you can call it, where he did a handstand after being eliminated. His feet never touched the ground, but did a handstand sort of from one side of the ring to the other outside, going to the ring steps, and then get back into the ring having never been eliminated. So a fun spot. And again, I say this, and some of the feedback we're getting on the Rumble is not very favorable, but I will say this, the natural built-in excitement of a Rumble matchup generally leads it to be better than it even might have been. And what I mean by that is you get so wrapped up in the countdown, the surprise entrance, and the number and the order of entrance that sometimes you sort of lose what really happened in the matchup. And I think there was a lot that happened in the matchup tonight, and definitely loving hearing all of your feedback on it. And we're going to get to more of your phone calls, but as we continue to talk to the Pro Wrestling Report broadcast team about this, let's bring on our Impact correspondent, Dwayne Williams. Dwayne, thank you so much for joining us. Love to hear your feedback, your thoughts on tonight's Royal Rumble matchup and the matches that occurred outside of it.
I definitely enjoyed the Rumble. I thought I would definitely give it a passing grade. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
What would you say were the highlights and or lowlights for you? Were there any mark-out moments in it for you?
Mark-out moments, I enjoyed the Ricardo entrance, also the Kofi spot. I was happy Sheamus won. I did not pick him as the winner. I don't think anybody did, and that in itself was good. I was expecting either Orton or Jericho, who was my pick to win. With Sheamus, being victorious, this shows that we're going to get a different matchup at WrestleMania, and they're really committed to elevating some of the younger guys. So, I definitely marked out for the fact that the younger guys really shine through, and we're seeing some progression from WWE management.
Who do you think Sheamus goes after? Does he go after the WWE champ CM Punk, or does he go after
He's going to go after
heavyweight champion Daniel Bryan?
Daniel Bryan.
Daniel Bryan and Sheamus at WrestleMania.
Title. Well, that title, at least. I mean, I don't know who's going to have it, but it's going to be the SmackDown title he goes after. But, I mean, a lot of people are not sold on the Daniel Bryan thing. I think that if you position Daniel Bryan with a stable, so to speak, and some people to hide behind, the Daniel Bryan character can be even better. You need to give him a stable, give him a big guy to hide behind. He has his girlfriend, obviously. You could create something with Daniel Bryan.
And you know what's so great about Daniel Bryan right now is they are doing such a consistent job with him, meaning they haven't hot-shotted anything. It's been a story that's been progressing over the course of the last few weeks, this whole AJ thing, Big Show thing, where in everybody's mind but Daniel Bryan is now a heel, and I think that's being delivered perfectly. But Matthew, who would you say Sheamus should go after? Which title should Sheamus seek at WrestleMania?
I would enjoy a Sheamus Daniel Bryan story. I think that those two could have a great match together, and I think the build to it would be very entertaining. I was very skeptical if we would get a Daniel Bryan title run through WrestleMania, but now with Sheamus winning the Rumble, it looks like that might not be that far off. So, yeah, I would love to see a Sheamus Daniel Bryan feud.
David Octavius Tiberius, the alleged one-time Backyard Hall of Famer hero, joining us now here on the post show. David, the Royal Rumble tonight, a man who you've been behind for quite a long time. Sheamus, the Great White, win the Rumble matchup. But there are so many people who deserve a lot of credit, or a lot of discussion, rather, as to what they performed and what they executed and what they delivered in the Rumble matchup. What were the highlights, aside from Sheamus winning, of course, and I'd love to hear your feedback on that, but what were your overall highlights and your overall surprising moments from the Rumble?
Well, highlights definitely were The Miz and Cody Rhodes doing well, establishing themselves as stars. Can you believe that? I put both those guys over in the same first sentence out of my mouth from this.
Things are changing.
There were some funny hot spots in the Rumble. It was entertaining. I mean, Mick Foley comes out, could barely walk to the ring, but obviously got a lot of face time, and Road Dogg Jesse James returns back to the pay-per-view. It was solid. It was good, but you know what? Let's talk about Chris Jericho who everyone thought was the odds-on favorite to win, eliminates Randy Orton, and then puts over Sheamus to win his first Royal Rumble. So Chris Jericho was the big catalyst for setting storylines for WrestleMania. I mean, we all talked about Punk and Jericho. Maybe it's Jericho and Orton. That might be where they're heading now for WrestleMania. And I think that match would be far better than Punk and Jericho, but Sheamus. I believe I once called him a future WrestleMania headliner. Funny how it proves itself, doesn't it, Damian Nelson?
Well, yeah, when you say it 3 years ago and then it finally happens, yeah, I guess you can take credit for that. CM Punk retains the WWE Championship tonight against Dolph Ziggler, and as we talked about this earlier with, I believe it was Ryno here on the post show, Dolph Ziggler really got beat more than once tonight because there were several finishes that never happened.
You know, it's amazing what they do with Dolph Ziggler. The guy's had 4 different characters in the last 5 years or 6 years with the company. He's one of their top in-ring performers, and yet for some reason they never pulled the trigger and put the belt on him. I mean, obviously they have unfinished business with Johnny Ace and CM Punk, and a lot of that's going to come to a head on Monday night, which I don't think Johnny Ace is going to be fired because he made the 3 count for the win. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, where they're going to take these guys.
Daniel Bryan retains in that 3-way championship cage match against the Big Show and Mark Henry. Your thoughts on that, David?
They had to put Bryan Danielson over because people didn't believe in him as far as being a champion. He beat the 2 biggest giants in that company inside of a steel cage to open the Royal Rumble. And going forward right now, he is the SmackDown World Champion.
Overall, Royal Rumble, in your opinion, David Hero, was it a solid show? Was it a weak show? Was it a passing show, or was it a failing show? Was it worth $45 or $55 tonight for the paying audience?
You know what? If you wanted it for the entertainment value for the Rumble, the $45, absolutely. But for the undercard, that came up relatively short. Wasn't as strong as I hoped it was going to be.
Tremendous. Well, a great effort tonight, a great show tonight from Great Lakes Championship Wrestling featuring Ryno, Scotty Hotty, and TNA Television Champion Robbie E., who was also part of that show before the Royal Rumble matchup. A good effort here at the Horny Goat Hideaway. And now all ships are pointing to the Elimination Chamber at the Bradley Center coming up in just a couple weeks.
Lots of shenanigans at GLCW tonight. Robbie E., Scotty Hotty, Ryno, Tony Scarpone. Great show. A little over 300-some people were there, and then they all stayed to watch the Rumble on the largest screen in the Midwest. And now it's time to get geared up for Milwaukee, Elimination Chamber.
All right, David, we'll let you get back to getting things sorted out from doing that GLCW show tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll talk to you on Monday Night Meltdown tomorrow night. And one question I want to ask to the rest of the Pro Wrestling Report broadcast team is, was Dolph Ziggler damaged tonight? What I mean by that is, and what David was talking about earlier, is these losses that keep stacking up for Ziggler, these big match opportunities where he really does go out there and overperform, over-deliver, and exceed expectations. But was there damage done to him tonight? Because he got pinned several times. Granted, there was only 1-2 at a time count, but was Dolph Ziggler damaged? Will the fans view Dolph Ziggler as a non-credible threat to the WWE or World Heavyweight Championship based off of his performance tonight? And we'll first ask you, Meathead, your thoughts. Was Dolph Ziggler damaged tonight?
No, not at all. Any kind of damage that was perceived to be, sustained to Ziggler had to be, recertified back in the Rumble again with his strong performance. Damn near a half hour into the Rumble, surviving after getting beat so many times. I mean, if he got beat so many times in the match against Punk, he brought it all back. He got all his heat back by going as long as he did in the Rumble.
Dwayne Williams, your thoughts? Was Dolph Ziggler damaged tonight in that matchup with CM Punk?
Absolutely not. If anything, he was elevated. The pins, if you will, did not hurt him. They can easily be explained away, or this can add to another layer of his character. He could probably separate from Vicky, become a little frustrated, and his character can expand maybe with a mean streak, a lot of different things. So I think he was elevated even more in this position.
And finally, Matthew Thomas, your thoughts. Dolph Ziggler, damaged or not tonight at the Royal Rumble?
I've got to complete the hat trick and concur with Meathead and Dwayne there. I don't think he was damaged a bit. I think that, his multiple losses, if you will, tonight, it's just par for the course when you've got a match with a Johnny Ace as a special guest referee, and I don't think he was damaged in the least. And with eliminating Karma like he did, he's well back on track now.
All right. Let's go to our next phone caller. Again, we're going to acknowledge you by the area code from which you're calling from, and then share with us your name and the city you're calling from. And our next caller comes to us from the 309 area code. Caller, you're live.
What's up? This is Arthur Jones calling from the Bloomington, Illinois area.
Hello, Arthur. What do you have for us?
I love the Royal Rumble, but I have some flaws myself. Kane and John Cena, I knew that this was going to happen, that Kane was going to get the upper hand on John Cena and Zack Ryder again. And the championship, the WWE Championship match, I knew when John Laurinaitis said he was going to be special enforcer, I knew I smelled a trap. When I did see it.
It may or may not have been a trap, and thank you very much for that call from Bloomington. But the trap didn't play out the way I don't think anyone expected it to, because Punk is still the WWE champion, and John Laurinaitis really didn't put forth much effort, aside from that one pitfall that was missed, to do anything to harm CM Punk in the matchup. But there is an unanswered question. Laurinaitis counted 2. The referee counted 3. Is that deliberately left open for tomorrow night's Raw and for a future screwing of CM Punk or a future rematch between him and Dolph Ziggler? Matthew?
Yeah, it's a definite possibility. Kind of a little open door right there that you've definitely got some room to work with.
And Dwayne?
Jury's still out on that.
All right. Well, thank you for that feedback. Let's go to our next caller, who's calling us from the 951 area code. Caller from the 951, your name and location, please.
My name is Mike from Moreno Valley, and I am the reason you called Daniel Hero for one-time Backyard Hall of Famer.
Tremendous. What do you have for us about the Rumble tonight?
I wasn't going to order the Rumble, and then I did.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of marked-out moments. Road Dogg coming back, I left my seat.
Nice.
So there were some good moments, but the way they got Daniel Bryan over, the match could have gone longer. I agree about the Cena promos where it was, it was kind of like it could have been cut down a little bit.
All right. If you had to pick, which was better, Cena or The Rock?
I'm going to say The Rock because it was more nostalgic. I grew up watching older school wrestling from the 60s and 70s to set my base for what I watch now. Mm-hmm. So, it was more nostalgic, so it kind of resonated more with me.
All right. Thank you for that call, Mike. We appreciate the feedback. Let's continue on the phone lines. Let's go to our next caller, who is calling us from the 614. Caller, your name and location, please. All right. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we'll acknowledge you by the area code from which you are calling from. Please tell us your name and location. And let's try a caller from the 402. Caller, you're live.
Hi, it's Stephen from Nebraska, Omaha.
All right. What do you have for us tonight?
I just basically had a comment on the Royal Rumble match itself. Usually I enjoy it. That's pretty much why you buy the Royal Rumble pay-per-view for the most part. And you were talking about, did it take away that there wasn't as many big-name stars, I guess, because they were trying to focus more on the younger talent?
Mm-hmm.
And for me it did, because I didn't really enjoy it that much. It just seemed like they wasted a lot of spots. They had Cole and King, and then they had Primo and Unico and Uso. It just didn't seem as exciting, or they didn't have as many memorable spots as they usually do. Because usually, there's a lot of interaction between big name guys, and I guess I just didn't feel like there was that time. Did you feel that at all?
It's a valid point, and I guess it depends on what you're expecting to get out of the Rumble. Me, personally, love the intrigue that was created by all of these people who really didn't have a chance of winning, but really had every chance of winning all at the same time. And I think that created, like I said, intrigue, and I don't think anybody going in tonight thought Sheamus would be that guy. We talked about it on Be the Booker. We knew he probably would be one of the final people and one of the candidates to potentially win the Rumble, but I don't think I would have thought going into tonight that he would have taken it all. So a question for you both, Matt and Dwayne. If you going into this, because we didn't get your thoughts on Be the Booker, if you going into this had to make a prediction, who would you have said would have won the Royal Rumble matchup tonight? We'll start with you, Dwayne.
Well, my pick was Jericho to win it. If you think back to last Monday, he promised something. He did not deliver. As it turned out, but I was predicting a Jericho victory. I thought that he definitely elevated Sheamus though in their exchange, but Jericho was my pick.
And Matthew, who would you have selected before tonight, going into the Rumble, as the man who would win it all?
Well, the funny thing was either Jericho or Orton, they both seemed like the smart bets, and I had an idea that they probably weren't going in that direction just because it seemed so obvious. But as far as to who that other person would be, I really couldn't pinpoint it, and it ended up being Sheamus tonight. So, yeah, I wasn't going in 100% sure. Jericho and Orton looked like, the strongest possibilities, but you had in the back of your mind that it was almost maybe a little too obvious.
All right, thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Dwayne. And finally, let's get your thoughts, Meathead, going into this pay-per-view tonight. Who would you have selected to be the winner?
I'm going to echo again what Dwayne and Matthew had said. I thought Jericho. I also had kind of like a second tier of guys that I thought had legitimate shots. I'd say Wade Barrett, Dolph Ziggler, or if CM Punk would have lost to Ziggler, I would have thought CM Punk could have been a winner as well. Plus maybe a returning Undertaker, maybe a John Cena, one of these guys jumping back in there. This is actually Kane's first non-appearance in the Rumble in how many years? I mean, Kane's been in a Rumble how many consecutive years in a row? Since he debuted, right?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Those are guys I would have thought, but as far as Sheamus winning, he was in that second-tier group of guys. I didn't think he was going to win, but I have no problem with it at all. Sheamus, it's the next step for him.
All right. Thank you, Meathead. Let's go to our next caller who comes to us from the 318 area code. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Will from Louisiana.
Hello, Will.
Hey, how y'all doing tonight?
Tremendous.
All right, good. I just want to say I'm happy for Sheamus winning the Royal Rumble. I actually got to meet him a couple of weeks ago. He did an autograph signing here in Shreveport, and really nice guy. Gave me a lesson in Gaelic, actually, but really happy for him, and it's a little bit of a breath of fresh air for a WrestleMania main event.
Yes, it is, and I think one thing, and thanks for that call, Will, from down in Louisiana, but I think one thing we all need to not overlook is that for many years now, this Royal Rumble main event winner, not every year, but for many years over the course of a couple of years, they weren't necessarily the one who went to WrestleMania and got that main event matchup. The Elimination Chamber coming up in just a few weeks at Milwaukee's Bradley Center could change everything. And I think it's a gauge by WWE as to what the interest is and what the draw could be. They've got a lot of protection in WrestleMania this year. What I mean by that is with The Rock and Cena on top, they've got a lot of built-in buzz. They've got a lot of built-in buys already, so they can take these, I'll call it experiments, but I don't mean it in a negative sense, these experiments they can take with some of these other talents. We'll see what actually happens come April 1st down in Miami. Let's go to our next caller who's calling us from the 347 area code. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, yes, this is Alex. I'm calling from Brooklyn, New York.
All right, Alex, what do you have for us tonight about the Royal Rumble?
I'm sorry, first-time caller. I just want to say I really enjoyed the match. I mean, I love the build-up, the fact that they're building new stars. Justin Gabriel's performance was excellent. I mean, I like the new talent focus. Everyone, the undercard was kind of weak, I think. I mean, I think they could have given the cage match a little bit more focus and the continued kind of light focus on the Divas was kind of just, it felt like they just kind of threw it in there just to fill up the card. But overall, I just liked the entire performance of the guys that did it in the Royal Rumble.
Alex from Brooklyn, thank you so much for that call. And, you know, Alex makes an excellent point, especially when you go as far back as last year's Royal Rumble, where a relative newcomer to WWE, while he's been in the business for a while, but a relative newcomer to WWE, Alberto Del Rio, won that matchup. Now fast forward to this year, Sheamus wins. And the people we're talking about with their performances in that match tonight are the Miz's, the Cody Rhodeses, the Kofi Kingstons of the world. Jericho, Orton, Big Show were there, but at the end of the day, you're not really talking much about Orton. You might be talking a little bit about Big Show. You're definitely talking a little bit about Chris Jericho, but the story really falls on a lot of the newer talent, if you will, in WWE in a relative sense, and I'm not sure after tonight many people can say that the WWE needs to build new stars, which has been the sentiment of a lot of fans for a lot of years in professional wrestling. I really think that tonight showed that they're looking forward and looking to build these people into true main event stars. Let's go to another phone call. The next caller is going to be calling us from the 503 area code. Caller from the 503, your name and location, please.
Bryan from Oregon.
Hello, Bryan from Oregon. What do you have for us?
Well, last Monday, Chris Jericho promised that something big was going to happen. He never really got mentioned on the show.
It did not, and that's a very valid point. And what Chris Jericho said last Monday night was it would be the end of the world as we know it. Who knows what he's up to? Who knows? Maybe he knew he wasn't going to go in and win. Obviously, his actions didn't speak that way tonight. But as David Hero said, maybe that did set the stage properly for a Sheamus win because there were two people, I think, in this Rumble matchup tonight that were fairly obvious winners. One being Randy Orton, given the fact that it was St. Louis, and we heard Ryno talk about the hometown advantage earlier, and Chris Jericho because of his actions, his recent return, what he said on Monday, and the perceived matchup that he's going to be having with CM Punk at WrestleMania. We can still get there, believe me, don't you worry about that, especially if Sheamus goes after Daniel Bryan. And let's not forget, there's been a little bit of drama between those two over the last few months over on the SmackDown side of things, so that would make some sense. Let's go to another phone caller, and that caller comes to us from the 646 area code. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Bree from Brooklyn, New York. Longtime fan of the show and the website. Love everything you guys put out.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
I overall was a bit let down from the Royal Rumble match, though there were a lot of things I loved about the match and the show. I would have loved to see Dolph Ziggler and CM Punk get a little more time. I don't know if they even hit the 15-minute mark, and it seemed like Laurinaitis kind of took a lot away from the end of the match. So Ziggler's counter kind of almost saved it, where that was when the crowd seemed to get right back into it. But overall, I would have loved to see more. I would have loved to see Kane in the Rumble. You know, I look forward to Kane in the Rumble like you look forward to Taker having a match at WrestleMania. And the fact that not only Kane wouldn't be there, but Cena, who used to want to have his match with The Rock against the title, for the title, he didn't, care enough to be in the Mania match, but Michael Cole did. I mean, that kind of took away from the match overall, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I love the possibility of seeing Sheamus versus Daniel Bryan, though I question if we'll get it. Keep in mind, we were supposed to get this match at WrestleMania last year, and then it just got bumped from the show. So I'm wondering if Daniel Bryan will be able to hold the title to Mania, but I really would like to see that.
All very good points, especially the point of, and thank you for that call out in Brooklyn, the point of whether or not the Ziggler-Punk match got enough time. And I'm going to give the microphone back to Matthew and Dwayne and Meathead to answer that question. Do you think that match was too short, too long, or just about right? Let's start with you, Dwayne.
I think it was just about right.
And Matthew.
Yeah, I thought they had a great match. I would much rather there been less focus on the whole Johnny Ace part of things. I'd love to have seen it be a Punk Dolph Ziggler match all the way through without all the shenanigans at the end. So yeah, I thought they had a great match, but yeah, it could have definitely gone without without the whole Johnny Ace involvement, just in this whole storyline, to be honest with you.
And finally, Meathead.
And now, if we're talking about the whole Punk and Ziggler match, I thought it could have a little bit longer. Well, I mentioned earlier in the program that I thought the whole John Cena and Rock promos were they're great promos. They did exactly what they're supposed to do. But do they belong on a pay-per-view? Other matches could have been had. More matches could have been had. Longer matches could have been had. So I thought it should have went longer. I thought they rushed through all that stuff just to get to this Rumble.
Tomorrow night on Monday Night Mayhem, we're going to talk a lot more. Monday Night Meltdown, excuse me. That's a different show. On Monday Night Meltdown tomorrow night, we're going to talk a lot more about the Royal Rumble, and we're going to take a lot more of your phone calls. Tonight is the night, though, where Sheamus walked out of St. Louis, Missouri, Randy Orton's hometown, after tossing Chris Jericho out with the brogue kick, and won the Royal Rumble. He's on his way to WrestleMania. CM Punk retains the WWE Championship against Dolph Ziggler. Daniel Bryan is still the World Heavyweight Champion, escaping the cage and not succumbing to the efforts of the Big Show and Mark Henry. John Cena and Kane ends in a no contest. Zack Ryder suffers more damage as a result of that particular matchup. And it was a night where the Royal Rumble really focused on a lot of newer stars. The Miz, Cody Rhodes, Kofi Kingston. Granted, they've been there for a while, but they're not the mainstays we've seen over the last few years in the Royal Rumble. And I think a lot of people very surprised by the Sheamus win from the feedback we've seen on Twitter, from the discussion in the chat room here on Blog Talk Radio, and from the poll. We asked you at PWRshow.com at Facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report before the Rumble to pick a winner. Gave you about 10 names, and overwhelmingly, Sheamus was on the list, as was Jericho, as was Randy Orton. Overwhelmingly, Jericho was picked to be the winner of the Rumble. So a bit of a swerve, I guess, almost, from WWE tonight, with Sheamus winning that Rumble matchup. And again, the feedback on the overall pay-per-view has been mixed. Some of you saying it sucked. Some of you saying it was the worst Rumble ever. Some of you saying it was the best Rumble ever. It's just like music. Some people love country. Some people hate country. And I know that I am not the biggest fan of country, unless it's Garth Brooks. I can deal with that. But pass was the score that you gave it on our Facebook page by a slim margin. So more people liked it than didn't. The question is, what will happen tomorrow night on Raw? Will John Laurinaitis be fired? Triple H is going to be a part of the show. Will we see The Undertaker come back? They've only got about 3 weeks to get us ready for the Elimination Chamber. How do we get there? Who's next for CM Punk is probably that scenario at the Elimination Chamber, because reports are that there will only be one chamber matchup at the pay-per-view coming up on February the 19th. In closing, I want to thank everybody for joining us, including our guests Ryno and Scotty Hotty. I want to apologize to the many of you waiting on hold and invite you to call us in tomorrow night. We only have about a minute left in the show today. But we want to thank all of you for making this the broadcast wrestling show of the year, as voted on in the Wrestling Radio Awards today. Very humbling award to receive, and really it's an award that we're not taking, but one that we're giving back to all of you, the fans, and our great listeners, and those of you who join us week in and week out for all of our programming at PWRshow.com and right here on Blog Talk Radio. So thank you so much. We'll do it all again tomorrow night on Monday Night Meltdown, and appreciate all the feedback and all the effort from the Pro Wrestling Report team here tonight on this program. Sheamus is the winner of the 2012 WWE Royal Rumble. What will happen going into WrestleMania? Who will he face? Which champion will he choose? All that to be found out over the course of the next few weeks